Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, I'm Kim Holderness.
And I'm Ben Holderness.
We host the Holderness Family Podcast every Tuesday.
You may know us from the silly videos that we make online.
Or a book about marriage called Everybody Fights.
Or as winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race.
Still can't believe that happened. Listen, we do a lot of stuff, but our podcast is our most favorite thing.
Yeah, because every week we get to sit down face-to-face, talk to each other about marriage, family, mental health, or just anything that we want to know more about.
Sometimes we have expert interviews, sometimes it's just us, but our goal is to bring some joy and laughter into your life every week.
Our other goal is that maybe you will learn something as well.
Right, so search the Holderness Family Podcast and check out our most recent episodes. We have one about staying organized with creators of the Home Edit.
And one about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
We hope you'll join us.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Cathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile. It's the podcast where we walk home from the movies. And today we're going to go see that new Irish film they're all talking about.
Yeah.
The Banshees of Inisherin.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
Now, we saw, this is by Martin McDonagh, writer, director, and his last film was Three Billboards, which we saw with your mom, Linda. So naturally, we invited her to go see this with us.
Hello.
So here she is. That's her. That's my way of introducing.
This is me.
Cathy's mom,
yes.
Linda.
They haven't seen me since we did that review.
It's been a while. Was that the last one?
Mom, you were
You've
on
been
like
on our
2 weeks
Patreon.
ago. I'm kidding. I said
Oh,
you
right.
haven't seen me since we
Oh,
did
we
that
haven't
last
seen
week.
you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
How have you been all these years?
Have they? Good.
We only met
Yeah.
up to watch Martin McDonagh movies together.
Three Billboards. Seems like a long time ago now.
It was a long time. I can remember very clearly walking along the Riverwalk.
Yes, it was very muddy.
And being stuck in the mud and trying to drag a buggy through it. That was fun.
But I think we all enjoyed it. We had a very heated debate.
We did.
I cannot remember what it was about.
I remember
so please,
Cathy was a Guinness on some subject.
you and I took.
But it wasn't. We all were in agreement. It was a brilliant movie.
Yes.
But
I
we
think
were
it-
just
I think it
against
was
each other.
something to do with Sam Rockwell's character.
It
I
was.
can't remember.
I think so, yeah.
But anyway, what do we know about this movie? I know very little. I started watching the trailer and then I thought, this looks great. I'm going to stop watching this
I
now.
didn't even watch the trailer because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's Martin McDonagh, it's Brendan Gleeson, and it's Colin Farrell. Like, I'm grand. I'll just watch the movie.
Yeah, so it's the first time they've all been reunited since In Bruges, which, by the way, In Bruges, we did an episode on our Patreon,
Patreon, yeah, last
patreon.com/The Cinemile, if you do want to go listen to our thoughts on that. And you can go listen to Three Billboards if you just scroll your finger back in this feed.
yeah.
Just keep scrolling. So are you excited, Linda, for this
I
one?
am. Now, I didn't watch a trailer either, but I did catch some of the hype and I did see them
You
interviewed.
caught some of the hype.
I caught some of the hype and I did see them interviewed on The Late Late Show.
Oh, The Late Late Show.
Yeah, so I've
The
seen...
world's longest running chat show.
So they say.
Most of our listeners are based in the UK and some in America, so that's for your benefit.
Not
It's an
the
Irish
James Corden show.
chat show. Yes.
The Irish equivalent. So I did see them interviewed and there was a lot of hype and a lot of red carpet and...
They're quite
So-
charming, those two.
They're very charming and they have a good chemistry and all I know is that they got the standing ovation in Venice.
Yeah, he
So-
won an award, Colin
He
Farrell
won
did. He
Best
won
Actor.
Best Actor.
So
Yeah.
I know a bit. That's all I know, but I haven't seen any of it.
Last time we saw Colin Farrell, he was hidden under a lot of makeup playing the Penguin and doing a best Robert De Niro
And I
impression.
didn't know I was watching him.
No. So transformative was that pointless makeup.
And funnily, Barry Keoghan's in that movie as well. But like, we didn't know he was in that movie either. And he's now in this movie.
Was in what movie? Was he in The Batman?
He was the Joker, remember?
Oh, yeah. Oh, funny. Yeah.
Oh, the young guy.
Yeah, he showed up in the... I think... No, he showed up in like a deleted scene. He's not even in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he is the Joker. Right, I don't know what else to say because we haven't seen the
Let's
movie
just
yet.
go.
We're all excited.
We're
so
thrilled. And I'm just so excited for Irish cinema this year because earlier this year, and I still haven't watched it, but I will watch it before this year is out. It was on Colleen Kuhn, which is like a huge international hit. We've got the Banshees of Inisherin, which everyone's talking about, and then next week we've got Aisha coming out, which is a brilliant looking Irish film about a refugee who comes to Ireland and the difficulty she faces. So it's like a great year for Irish cinema to actually see Irish movies to big acclaim is a brilliant thing, and we're delighted. So let's go watch it.
Yes, all right, I will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Colin's sonny Larry. Didn't you and he used to be the best of friends?
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not? Sit somewhere else.
Now, if I've done something to you,
Just tell me what I've done to you.
Well, you didn't do anything to me. I just don't like you no more.
You didn't like me yesterday. Why does he not want to be friends with you no more? What is he, 12?
What the hell's going on with you, me feckin' brother?
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been done.
The other night, 2 hours you spent talking to me about the things you found in your little donkey shite that day.
Well, it wasn't me little donkey's shite, it was me pony's shite, which shows how much you were listening.
Right, we're back. We've seen the Banshees of Inisherin. If it's your first time on this podcast, well, there's no spoilers, so we won't spoil anything about this movie beyond the general synopsis of it until we get to Spoiler Street, which is always on our way home. My God, I loved that movie so much. It was incredible. I think it's his best movie. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Anyone else?
I loved it as well.
It was brilliant.
I loved every minute of it. I actually just relished in it. Some of it made me very uncomfortable, but
as it is intended to.
I relished in the whole production. I was so happy.
It was like being transported.
It was like I was so happy to just watch this very Irish movie with these incredible actors and with such an unusual storyline. I'll leave it at that. Mom, what did you think?
I was transfixed, I think is probably the best word. I feel a little bit speechless. I found it a difficult watch and a beautiful watch.
It's uncomfortable.
I was very uncomfortable. I really cried for a lot of it. I didn't even know what about, but it touched me deeply. And then the obvious stuff, the absolute beauty of the cinematography, the landscape, the extraordinary acting. So overall, quite an event.
Shot in Achill, I believe. I frantically Wikipedia'd this. So at Inisherin, not a real place. Achill Island is where they shot it. And Inishmore, yes. So those are both islands off the west coast of Ireland.
One of the things that really struck me as soon as I started watching it was I didn't realise it was even, because I completely avoided any information on it. I didn't even know it was set in the 20s. And I love that as the setting, and
I think it's very important to the theme of the movie.
It's really interesting because it makes me think, God, that was 100 years ago in Ireland, and how different Ireland is now, and yet how much of it's still the same. Particularly, with men feeling like they have to be silent and stoic and performative, and all that stuff I find really interesting. And I love the idea of a movie centered around friendship and not around romance. It's unusual enough, to be honest. So I think they're just it's actually a privilege to watch those two act on screen together.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
And I think we should just briefly touch on the general plot of this movie. It is, I think you've both said it. It is about male friendship, and it is in particular about the friendship between Colin Farrell's character and Brendan Gleeson's character Cullum. And basically one of them, Brendan Gleeson's character, decides he does not want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore because he's dull.
It's a breakup movie.
And it's a breakup, yeah, exactly. But it kind of escalates from there. But I think this film is gripping. It is funny. It was laugh out loud funny several times, while also being incredibly uncomfortable, as you said, Linda. I totally agree with that. I was on the edge of my seat, and it escalates. It keeps escalating.
I shouldn't be laughing, but I'm laughing. That's the kind of humour that it is.
But it was also very beautiful and poignant. I thought the script is fantastic. I think that historically I've kind of jarred against some of Martin and John McDonagh's work because they often feel very cool, trendy dialogue that jars with reality, if you know what I mean. Cool people saying clever things in crime shows, particularly with things like The Guard and Calvary. None of that felt natural or organic. These people felt very real.
Neither The Guard nor Calvary, so that's not fair.
I said I was grouping the McDonaghs, the collective McDonaghs. Yes, but I think In Bruges is guilty of that in places as well, of being very over the top and sensationalist.
I think by the very nature of this being said in the 20s in an island in Ireland with men, there's just less talking.
I found it incredibly grounded. I thought the production design was very it's a very restrained movie in many ways. It is.
And then in other ways it's like a horror film.
In many ways it's very over the top. I don't know what else to say beyond Spoiler Street. I think we'd all massively recommend this.
I think there's something.
Would you
yeah,
recommend
yeah,
it?
absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a masterpiece.
I agree.
I think it's a masterpiece. I think there's lots that didn't work, but we can get to that. For me, I think to say it was set in the 20s, but for those who don't know Irish history, it was set in the backdrop of the Irish Civil War, the tail end of the Irish Civil War. So we have a country at war, brother against brother, which is providing the backdrop for this friend against friend. So it's very poignant, and so there's a lot of history there. And what you say, or one of you said, it was shot in the late 20s. Now, I spent time both in Achill and...
Well, it was 1923, I think.
28, I think. Oh, okay.
No, it was 23.
Okay, 23.
The Civil War was 1 year from 22 to 23.
But I was in both those locations in the 70s, which realistically isn't that long after this movie was set.
And I bet they weren't much different.
Not much different, and a little bit disconcerting, and probably not much different now.
I feel like we should do a very super quick top line history lesson, because as I called out the fact that, like, Cathy's the face you're giving me. No, but so many people won't have, and we said a lot of our listeners are British or American. They won't have the context for this, or what the Irish Civil War even was.
Well, this would be
and
really
I think
interesting. Who's going to give the little brief?
I'll do it, right?
Yes, that certainly can't be me.
All right, I'll do it. Right, top level. 1922 was the end of the Irish War of Independence, right, between Ireland and Britain, and it's referenced in this movie as it was easier when we were all fighting the British together.
This is true.
Then a treaty was made, and this is all contained in the movie Michael Collins, by the way, if you want to just go watch that. A treaty was agreed, the Anglo-Irish Treaty between the UK and Ireland, which would create the Irish Free State, but it would remain under the rule, much like Canada or Australia, of the King. Right, so we were
the 6 counties up north were at that point annexed, which was very significant.
So, which has remained to this day. So the Republic of Ireland, which we live in today, did not come into creation until the 40s, despite the fact we have been a free state for 100 years now. And the most important thing is that there were people in the Irish government, but half of them were for this and half were against, and there was a year of incredible fighting and bloodshed, which they speculate might have been more so than the actual War of Independence itself. And that's the backdrop of this movie.
I don't think any of that matters for this movie, though. I actually don't think you need a single drop of that context.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. Was that not interesting? Were you not interested? So many people... Cathy, we lived in the UK for 6 years, and some people I met didn't even know that we weren't part of the UK.
I think it's significant.
So I'm sorry for the history lesson, but I think that's important.
No, I don't think it's an accidental backdrop. I don't think it's accidental.
He deliberately placed it in the first year of the Irish Free State.
I didn't say it was accidental. I just said that it wasn't necessary to understanding the movie.
Okay.
Oh, fine, yeah, sure. But is it not interesting? Cathy is just raging. What you can't see on this podcast is that Cathy was flapping her hands around like, roll up your stupid lesson about Irish history, Dave. Nobody cares. Look, if nobody cares, they've got a skip button. They could skip. They could have skipped it.
Okay. DM us on Twitter if it still exists by the time this episode comes out. Let us know if you skipped or not.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so yeah, the that backdrop is really interesting, and it's interesting, Mum, that you said you were there in when did you say you were there, in the 60s, 70s?
70s.
And then I was in the 90s a couple of times in Inishbofin, which is in or around there as well. And I have to say, Inishbofin in the 90s wasn't even that different. It's so funny how those islands in Ireland are like, of course they're like, part of Ireland, and presumably, now it's different, but like, in a way, they're probably less bustling now than they were in this movie.
Well, I think
there's a lot of people in this movie living there, and there's a lot of goings on that are really interesting.
I think the themes of this movie are still very relevant today. This idea of sort of male friendship being quite repressed. The traditional sense of masculinity, not being comfortable to discuss your feelings, and how that can be quite literally self-destructive on oneself and can just blow up relationships. And there's this whole idea of the oppression of society and expectations. There's a real interesting motif throughout this movie of masks. Brendan Gleeson's whole house is covered in masks.
Oh God, I didn't even notice that.
And like what the expectations of society are versus individual expression and freedom, which is what his character is kind of aiming for by being a musician and striving towards that. So there's a lot to unpick. I think it's a really beautiful script. I would watch it again. But also in terms of, what you guys are saying about how familiar it is to modern Irish life in many ways, the things that are familiar to me, the pub is at the centre of this movie. It's still at the centre of, and it has been throughout all of our lives, I think, still at the centre of most Irish communities. What's interesting is the damage that you kind of see that do a little bit, while also the benefits of it. They all go down at 2 p.m. to the pub every day, which I found quite interesting. 2 p.m.
No draft on this island. You could only get your beer from a bottle.
From a bottle, yeah, which may not have been the case.
I wondered, because of the times that have passed, I wondered who could afford to go drinking in the afternoon at night now. Did either of you have that? You couldn't afford now to go out and drink 4 or 5 pints a day. I guess
the price of a stout in 1923 must have been a lot lower.
How were they funding this lifestyle? Anyway, we'll move on.
We saw him go down. Colin Farrell's character brings his cow to the shop with some milk, and that's enough for a week's worth of pints.
Let's get to spoilers, but before we do, I just want to say, for anyone who hasn't seen it, also really brilliant performances by Barry Keoghan and Kelly Condon, 2 other Irish actors. So it was actually brilliant. Like, there's a brilliant cast, and all other extra people too. It's not just Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, but like, it could have been. They could hold a movie just the two of them.
Pat Kenny and John Short and Pat Kenny. Sorry,
no, do you mean
not Pat Kenny? Wait, Pat Kenny was not in this movie. John Short and Pat Kenny. Pat Short and John. Thank you. The Unbelievables. They're an old Irish comedy duo.
Oh my God,
who I thought were quite welcome.
Sorry, excuse me and forgive me. I have one more thing to say about Irish cinema this year. Blackbird.
Oh my God!
When I named all the Irish hits of the year, I forgot to talk about that.
Forgot about the biggest Irish hit of the century.
Anyway, will we go to Spoiler Street now?
Not an Irish movie in any way.
We'll go to Spoiler Street. We all recommend this. I would give it a little bit of a content warning for the film. Like, there are some dark themes and some depressive themes, and if someone's feeling a bit sensitive or not very well mentally, I don't necessarily know that this is a movie to watch. So I would just put a bit of a content warning ahead of it.
I agree. There is.
What
would you describe the content warning as? I would say.
I would just say my content warning is mind yourself, and if you're not feeling great, don't watch this movie.
Yeah. I found it distressing.
There's existential despair, self-harm, amongst other things.
Yeah, and cruelty.
Cruelty, yes, yeah. But yet it is also very, very funny.
Yes.
All right.
Just master of black humour. Okay, now we're on to Spoiler Street.
Spoiler Street. Spoilers now for the Banshees of Inisherin. So, I don't know, where do you even start here? What do you...
Can I just say the fundamental plot of a friend breaking up with another friend? And it's so interesting. It's like 2 adult men, because multiple people say, like, what is he, 12? Like, this is a thing that happens all the time in schoolyard, right? We've all probably been broken up with and had friends and broken up with friends in the schoolyard. It's totally normal. As adults, if there's a friend that you, for whatever reason, don't want to be around, generally life's busy enough and there's enough going on that you can kind of just, like, stop seeing them. But what's so interesting in this island context is, like, there's no one around. Like, he used to make a really hard cut to end this friendship, and he does that both literally and figuratively.
There's nowhere to go. They break up and they're in the same pub, and that was the cruel part for me.
Yeah,
his capacity for cruelty in the face of his friend's heart breaking.
Colin Farrell is just
Colin Farrell's performance is so lovely,
because he understands. He even says to his sister, I think he's depressed. Like, he understands it's self-destructive,
but he can't,
and he
let it
keeps
go.
trying to push him. And it's just like when Brendan Gleeson says he's going to cut off his fingers, and we're all like, haha, he's not going to cut off his fingers.
What I thought was so brilliant about this movie and the script is that we're all watching Brendan Gleeson's actions, and as an audience we're thinking, this is mad. Every time I thought something like, this is mad, this is childish at the beginning, another character called it out. Like, what are you, 12? I liked that the Martin McDonagh was anticipating the audience reaction, then he'd have someone else in the community point it out. And then Brendan Gleeson makes his insane ultimatum where, every time you bother me, I'm going to chop off another one of my fingers. And I'm thinking, like, in that moment I'm like, a character wouldn't do that. That's ridiculous. What's happening? And then the 2 lads in the bar are like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And the sister calls him out
because his dream is to play the violin. So of all the things to do to yourself, It's like the most destructive self-harm to kill your own passion.
Given that we've gone straight there, it's the thing in the movie that did not work for me. I loved his performance, but his character was unbelievable. There were too many conflicts. There was tenderness in Gleeson, there was this cruelty, and then there was that insanity, and there were no segues that led him from one to the other, and it was insane to say, I'm breaking up with you because I want to be creative, do my music, and now I'm cutting off all my fingers. It didn't work for me.
Things, yeah.
It just conflicted, and there was no way to make it believable. I found his performance believable, but his character...
You didn't believe that a character would do this?
I didn't believe the character.
Well, he's clearly somebody who is unhinged, right? And I think you get indications of it when he's in the confessional with the priest, and the priest keeps asking him, how's the despair? And at the first time he goes in, he has just cut off, he's made this decision to cut off this person in his life who he considered dull, to focus on his music. He's clearly someone in some sort of like mid or end life crisis. He speaks a lot about what legacy I'm going to be forgotten about. I need music as my legacy. So he decides 100%, like, I'm going to focus all on this. I have no distractions.
Then he says, look, Colin Farrell, like, I'm not going to come to the pub till 7 o'clock every night.
No, I know.
2 and 7, I'm going to play
guys,
music.
Obviously there is a better solution to this, but I think he says to the priest,
I'm going to interrupt you here.
Go on.
I think the modern equivalent is I need to give up social media so I can write my book.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. I need to stop this mindless scrolling, which is how he was identifying
100%,
Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
100%.
Colin Farrell is TikTok to him.
He's TikTok, exactly.
But when he does that and makes the decision, he has his first confession with the priest and says, I have not been experiencing despair lately. So this is his solution to that problem. And he takes it to extremes. But later he tells the priest, the despair is back. And I think this is one of the most important lines in the film. The priest says, are you going to do anything about it? And he kind of says, do you want to talk about it? Do you want to do anything about it? He says, nah, it's under control. And I think, for me, I think it is a bit, literally, pun intended, heavy-handed, the whole finger thing. But I think what Martin McDonagh is trying to say is that this whole, like, men, or historically men, have been this unwillingness of men to identify or speak about their emotions with a friend or otherwise, or even address them, that is so self-destructive that they will literally, like, destroy themselves rather than engage a friend in a conversation. And Colin Farrell's character acknowledges it, addresses it, says, are you depressed? And he still won't talk to him. That's the point where he then cuts off his entire hand rather than engage Colin Farrell in that discussion. I think that's what he's trying to.
Your nose to spite your
yeah,
face.
Exactly.
Literally.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And Colin Farrell's character, like, while they say he's dull or whatever, like, he says, you talked about your donkey's shit for 2 hours the other night, which is very funny. And I love that we just started with the movie with the breakup, like, we never really saw them as friends before.
Yeah.
But, like, Colin Farrell's really sweet because he's actually very sweet to Barry Keoghan's character in his own way. He helps him out with his dad. He stands up to his dad. He has a very loving relationship with his sister. He's very sweet to his animals, and he's continually sweet to Brendan Gleeson, which is why I found it's so good when he turned, when that donkey died, and he went, I'm going to burn your house and we're going to take this to the grave. That's the moment when because all the kind of, like, I started to really enjoy them, because I was like, what's Colin Farrell going to do? And I say that sequence,
do you know what
I really enjoyed?
What I think happened there, I thought, like, watching it at first is because of the donkey. He's lost his donkey and there was this deep friendship.
But
I think
his sister.
He lost his sister was the big thing. That sister and that character and that acting, she held all the men together.
Yeah.
She was the fulcrum, she was the centre point, and she left and he couldn't cope. I think that's what actually tipped him over the edge into hell hath no fury, like Colin Farrell wronged.
But it all happened in one day as well. Like, of course, it's very movie, but, like, the donkey died, the sister left.
But she represented his emotional. She was the only character who had a relatively healthy perspective on emotions. Yeah. She asks Colin Farrell at one point, "Do you ever get lonely?"
Yeah,
right. She's
real.
reading. She's real. She is trying to escape this repression society. I think this is a lot of this. She hides from the character who's just a town gossip and a portend of ill things to come.
I love that character, the Banshee.
Yeah, she rejects all that stuff, and she eventually is the only person who is able to escape.
She survives.
And I think the movie is about, by setting it in a repressed Irish society, and just off the coast of Ireland, right? It's not even like Ireland. They're watching conflict from afar. They're so isolated. Mm-hmm. I think it's like a lot of the movie is about the sort of blending into society and being happy and nice, right? The word nice gets used a lot. Colin Farrell is a nice guy, and he's relatively well adjusted, but he is, also referred to as dim. You'd have to be stupid. Like, as soon as you gain intelligence, perspective, self-awareness, it leads to a route of unhappiness and despair.
Well, according to
this movie.
Well, more so according to Brendan Gleeson, because the sister, everyone knows, is really smart, and he's like, I can't remember what he says to her exactly, but do you ever wonder what the point of it all is? And she's like, no. And he's like, yes, you do. And she's like, no, I don't.
But she does.
But she doesn't, though. She's like forward looking at her life. She wants to be a librarian. She's reading books. I thought that was really interesting that he just presumed that because people aren't despairing that they're not intelligent, but I don't think the movie presumed that.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think the other point about keeping them together, Mum, is I think she was really keeping Colin Farrell together. Yeah. I don't think Brendan Gleeson had any time for her, nor was she keeping him together. But the Barry Keoghan character,
well,
that was so sad.
It's so sad.
Like when he said to her, "Could you ever love a boy like me?" And he's so sweet in this film.
Oh, I was inconsolable.
Oh God! And then he just kind of. There've been talk of people walking into lakes earlier, but they just showed us him in the lake, and I felt like,
it was
God,
awful.
he was only in a montage at the end, and I think that was just like the callousness of the island. It just washes these young men away.
Well, that's it. And his father was literally an authority figure, right?
His father was such an awful. But that's the bit of the movie that I just hated watching that man.
But he for me represents, if you look at the movie through that lens of like. Going along and being nice and just being a normal part of society, or having individual expressive creation or expressionist personal freedom like Brendan Gleeson is trying to achieve through the wrong way. I think his character, Barry Keoghan, is somebody who was very much he's the most sort of himself of all the characters. And he is being punished constantly by the society for that. He's called the Gome of the island. He's called the stupid one. He's banned from the pub. But all he's doing is trying to break free of this society's expectations of himself and have a normal, well-adjusted life.
And when he says to Colin Farrell, I thought you were one of the nice ones, and he walks away, that's so cutting. It's like, God, if he told you weren't nice, like.
But can we just talk about Barry Keoghan's performance in this? Because the physicality and the way he moved, I thought, like, just incredible. The way, like, he's constantly sort of, like, uncomfortable in this society, like, just always trying to, like, shift around. I don't know.
I thought he was brilliant. I mean, initially I thought, he's a little bit pantomime-y, he's a little bit excessive, but ultimately, for me, he stood out, and I don't remember her name, the sister, that actress.
Kelly Condon?
They're the ones I think should be getting the supporting actors.
They're incredible. The four of them were just flawless.
I think the thing is, though, how it will have to work is surely for like Oscars and stuff, which presumably this is going to win loads of or be nominated for loads of. Brendan Gleeson would have to be supporting, though, because Colin Farrell has the most screen time and is the star.
He's the protagonist, I think. We're seeing this all kind of through his perspective.
You can have several supporting actors.
That's what I mean. But I think the only best actor they would put forward, because they'd want to win it, would be Colin Farrell. And
they play a bit of politics with that stuff, don't they?
For me, his character was believable and his performance were believable. Unlike Brendan Gleeson, I didn't believe it. I'm sorry, but I didn't.
I believed it.
I didn't believe it.
I did.
No, didn't do it for me.
I believed a man who was staring at the end of his life and trying to figure out what it was all about. I think what you're struggling with realistically, and I agree with, is like that his actions are hard to swallow. I agree with that. Unlike his fingers, which are easy to swallow.
I thought if you took it to the nth degree, right? You took it to the nth degree. In his own mind, he was very logical, where he was like, I don't want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore. He can just never speak to me again. He never actually thought, wait, how will this play out?
Like, work? We drink in the same pub.
Yeah, he's going to want to be friends with you. Then he's like, I'm just going to compose this incredible music. Then he makes this threat to Colin Farrell to stop speaking to him. And then he's so stubborn that when Colin Farrell insists on talking to him, he just follows it through. And I feel like if you take it to its nth degree, a man that's very disturbed and very stubborn and lives in this island, which seems quite ghoulish. I don't know, I wasn't... Like, he did walk out of his house at the end, and I think that's kind of... that's nice that he actually left the flaming house. What I thought was mad was that Colin Farrell was willing to let him sit in there and burn. I didn't see that coming.
Well,
oh my God, I thought they were about to make up.
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be some redemption in that final scene, but there wasn't. Colin Farrell was on a mission. Do you know what it reminded me of, movie-wise? The actual movie, The Breakup. Remember the one with Jennifer Aniston which again was hard to watch. Sold as comedy, but honestly, guys, I did not find this one comedic at all.
Really? Oh my God, I laughed out loud so many
at the
times.
door, like I had dark laughter with it.
I'm not saying I didn't laugh, but sometimes that's actually an uncomfortable response.
Yeah.
I found it all very uncomfortable.
But there were so many funny lines, like in particular when he says when he completes the song and he catches him dancing with the dog, and Colin Farrell asks him something like, he said, Brendan Gleeson says something like, could you dance to it? Is it like a tango? And he says, no, it's not a tango. I don't want to write a tango. I don't do dancing. And he says, but sure, I saw you dancing with your dog just now. It just had me.
It made me so sad for Brendan Gleeson because he loved his dog so much, and it's that weird thing where like a lot of men like really love their animals, and it's like, could you transfer that to humans?
Well,
maybe?
I think that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
He was unable to verbalize his feelings, his emotions in any capacity. And I think you could run deep. I think it is, two authority figures we see who are present throughout all of Irish history in an oppressive force are the church and the police, and they're the only two people, and they're the two people who kind of reject him or try. The policeman.
The policeman loves him. He wants him to come into a
hanging. But he's a horrible figure of repression.
I love that scene where Colin...
the priest F's and blinds him out of the confessional box the first time.
I love that scene where Colin Farrell like confronts him in the pub, and he's like, "You're not nice. You're hanging out with the guy who abuses his own kid." And you do see that Brendan Gleeson's like, you think he's having a moment, and he actually says like, "That's the most I've found him interesting ever." But then he still cuts the finger off the next day. It's like Brendan Gleeson's own worst enemy is himself, because he actually does like Colin Farrell, but he's like got a notion that he doesn't want to be with him, and he just can't reconcile. And like we all know people who are really stubborn.
He only likes him when he's drunk. He says that several times. And when he's drunk is when he starts to reject authority and society, right?
Colin
That's
Farrell,
when he's not being quote unquote nice.
Yeah, they all say, oh, like he's here for money, he has a few drinks or whatever.
Can we talk about Colin Farrell's performance with the animals? Not just with the animals, but how comfortable he was riding that carriage, and he looked like he just fit perfectly.
He
into
looked
the
like a
1920s.
man out of time.
He looked like a man of Aaron.
Do we feel like there's any
great
universe in which
well.
Colin Farrell is single and shares a room with his sister?
Yes,
that was unbelievable.
No,
because he's so good looking.
No, I believed it. I
don't think adult siblings shared rooms. I don't.
But if it was a one-roomed house and it was a single,
somebody asleep on a bunk in front of the fire. I didn't
think?
believe that, yeah.
But I think your point, Cathy, is that he's too attractive to be believable in this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was only joking, by the way.
Because I actually think his performance was so good, it overcame how attractive he is.
I mean, yeah, he's one of those actors who can overcome his own good looks.
And I think the bad haircut they gave him helped.
I'm such a sap, because at the end of this movie, what I thought it was going to be was that him and Brendan Gleeson slept in the two beds and like lived in, like, it was basically Dr. Dolittle, and the house was just full of animals.
Oh my God, Cathy.
I know. Oh
dear.
But then when he met Brendan Gleeson on the beach, and Brendan Gleeson's like, so we're even, and I think Brendan Gleeson now wants to be friends again, and Colin Farrell's like, no, I wish you died. And that's why the ending
in no way was that ever going to happen.
The ending was so impactful, because it's like, oh, now Brendan Gleeson's like, oh, but he thinks, oh, I'm over my bitterness. What about you? And Colin Farrell's like,
well, what's interesting is if you take it back to the backdrop that they have, they keep stopping to see the explosions. Then there's a reference at one point to the fact that, the war is coming to an end, which it was. It lasted a year.
Well, as per your history lesson.
Yeah, but in the timeline of this movie, it is about to wrap up. But then Colin Farrell says something like, Pandora's box has been opened now. And what happened in Ireland was decades and decades of more violence and relative civil war in Northern Ireland, all that. So it's just like it fits both thematically and sort of and literally. This feels a bit depressing now.
Yeah.
But
what do you think about the old woman, the ghoul, who I loved her? Every time she showed up, I got joy from her.
That actress was great.
She was good, and she was kind of believable from the times. And the other character was the old post office lady. Like, they were great
your news
characters.
is shite. You've no news for me.
She goes, is this a job offer? Is it from a library?
She's read all the.
But that's the Ireland. That's the Ireland. My dad grew up in very rural Ireland in the 1950s and 60s, And the people he used to describe to me were just like that, and the church, all that. Like, this is an Ireland that felt very familiar to me from my dad's descriptions of rural Ireland. And like you said, Linda, we're only 2 generations away from what we saw on the screen. It felt very close to home.
But I feel like you could go to a pub though in rural Ireland right now and it would be like that pub.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pint bottle of Smithwick's is what it looked like.
And I think we should also give credit to Martin McDonagh. This is his first movie he's ever filmed in Ireland. It feels so authentically Irish. And he's somebody who, he's got Irish parents, but, grew up outside of, he grew up in London. He's ostensibly English in many ways, but very connected. They both are very connected to their Irish roots. But he's so perfectly captured it and encapsulated it, and while we don't know exactly how authentic it is to 1923, it certainly feels like it's just one step removed from an Ireland that we grew up in and my parents grew up in.
I mean, stunning cinematography, stunning chemistry or whatever you call that between all the players. They obviously were all working well together, crew, cast. The backdrop was incredible. They built that bar, especially with that view over the ocean that was built from scratch.
Oh, really?
Yeah. About that. The house looked real though, like they found some old thatched houses.
They found some old thatched house, but they built Brendan Gleeson's. I think his house was, I know this from their interview, his was built on the Aran Islands specifically.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was
So
thinking
they could burn it down.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
God, that scene though when Colin Farrell just left him in the room aflame and walked off. So I didn't get my happy ending, but I loved the movie and
I loved it.
I'm thrilled to see it on the big screen as well, because I think it's one to watch in the cinema screen because it's so, like, the vista.
Well,
so
it's atmospheric and immersive.
Yeah.
I think I felt like really drawn into it.
It's very compelling.
Yeah.
And the woman who was sitting next to me turned to me at the end and said, "That was brilliant, wasn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And like, that doesn't normally happen in a cinema.
No.
Like, your fellow patrons don't normally like engage with you. She was like so upset about the donkey. She was literally like, "Oh no!"
It was very
about the
sad.
donkey.
It was sad.
It was so sad. The donkey was so cute. But anyway,
Kelly the donkey, R.I.P.
We'll have you back for the next Martin McDonagh movie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
see you in
look
6
forward to
years. No, thanks, Linda, for joining us, and thanks for listening, everyone. And please let me know if you want to listen to my spin-off Irish History podcast, which I'm going to be launching despite Cathy. And it's just going to be me and Cathy, and I will ramble on about Irish history, and she'll do this the whole time, spin her fingers around.
Can I put in a question here for the listeners, because as you said, so many of them are not Irish. So I'd really love to know how this movie lands for people who don't have the kind of nostalgia and the history that we have.
I would be very interested in that too.
Let us know.
They've all seen The Quiet Man. They know what's up.
You can talk to us about The Quiet Man or this movie on Elon Musk's Twitter at The Cinemile. We are on Instagram at The Cinemile. You can email us at thecinemile@gmail.com. We love getting emails. Or you can go join our lovely community of hundreds of Cinemile fans over at patreon.com/The Cinemile, where we do retro movie reviews and TV reviews. We've just done Batman Forever, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, loads of other movies there just sitting there waiting for you.
Including The Guard, of course.
No, not The Guard, in Bruges.
In Bruges. Sorry.
And also, we've just started our Letterboxd account. So if any of you guys are on Letterboxd, do let us know. Linda's throwing her hands up in the air like, what is Letterboxd? It's the platform that Elon Musk doesn't own. It's a film social network. So if you're not on there, go out, give it a look. It's quite fun. So we're going to go down there, do any reviews.
Can we take our Twitter blue tick and put it onto Letterboxd instead?
Yeah,
Would we have to
we
pay
mention
for it?
the Twitter blue tick? I was deciding not to mention.
Don't open up that civil war.
I was wondering, can we afford it anymore?
So to be honest, if they take it away and someone else impersonates us, there's nothing we can do about it. But if it's
sick of people
it's not the
impersonating
Cinemile if there isn't one person tweeting about Marvel and another person tweeting about Love Is Blind, but it's all from the same account.
Yeah, and you never quite know who you're getting. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And
if you are watching Love Is Blind, we have actually been recapping that over on our Patreon as well, so head over there for some Love Is Blind chat.
Yeah.
Absolute drivel.
Says the woman who was addicted to season 1 in the pandemic.
That's Linda's review of our episode of Love Is Blind.
She's recorded her own episodes about it. Okay, bye.
Right, bye.
Let's just call it quits.
We won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.